So it's great because it's primarily fructose, which goes straight to your liver, and your liver overnight has been being drained of glycogen. So glycogen is stored sugar, and that's what kind of keeps our metabolism running overnight, keeps us from dying. That said, OJ doesn't always work for everyone. So first off, congratulations. For reintroducing dairy, I would probably start with a cheese like ricotta or mascarpone, or like a hard cheese like Parmesan that has, a little less lactose. And then for meat-ish stuff, I would probably start with eggs. Remember to go low and slow, because basically your gut is like, if you don't use it, you lose it. So adding too much of this stuff at once will basically shock your system. You're not going to feel good, and you're not going to be able to digest it. So go low and slow, try to rebuild your digestive support and ability over time. You might also need temporarily digestive support to get the minerals and vitamins that you actually need to be able to create the stomach acid to digest those things. So sometimes you do need temporary digestive support to get back to eating meat and protein like that. This is more often than not a vitamin C deficiency. So I would look into getting whole food vitamin C, not a supplement, unless it is a whole food vitamin C supplement, and go from there. I would check out my metabolism health check guide in the link in my bio. There's some tips, not just for the metabolism, but those also apply to lowering stress. And then as far as beef liver, there's a really good account called The Edge Content. She has a great liver pate. It's like a Persian liver pate recipe. It's really yummy. And then look for at Heather Matheny, FNTP. She has a really good chicken liver pate recipe. You could, toy around with that. So elimination is not necessarily going to reduce inflammation. I've worked with plenty of clients that have done elimination diets before coming to work with me that wrecked them, and then they came to me to help fix them. I wouldn't necessarily say elimination is going to help unless you're trying to lower something like your PUFA intake, for example. And then, it sounds pretty basic, but things like getting enough sleep, getting enough sunlight, eating well and frequently, and then not over-exercising are going to be way less inflammatory and help you fight inflammation way better than any supplement or any diet ever can. And then from there, depending on what's actually happening and going on with your body, we dig a little deeper together to figure out what the source of inflammation is. But if you have just general inflammation, I would start with those 4 general things. Honestly, no. There is nothing that worked for me topically. Of course, there's, personal hygiene, making sure you're washing your pillowcases, your face towels, making sure you're washing your face after working out. But the only thing that made my skin better was getting my progesterone up and ovulating again. Once I started ovulating again, my skin completely changed. So I would focus on minimizing stress overall and trying to boost your progesterone, getting your cycle back, number 1, versus, the topical stuff that you can just put on your face. It's going to be way more effective. Yeah, chlorine can do a number on somebody's health. Basically, chlorine displaces iodine, which you need for thyroid function. So many people that were swimmers when they were younger or swimmers today still have low thyroid function because they're deficient in iodine. It can also dry and irritate the skin a lot. It's in our tap water, so if we don't have a filter, a chlorine filter on our shower head, we're basically freebasing chlorine, which is really, really not good for our lungs. And same thing goes for heated pools. So, that's not to say like I won't go in a pool once in a while, but if I do, I make sure that I'm getting enough. I make sure I'm getting enough iodine in my diet during that day or week, whatever the situation is. I rinse off really, really well with filtered water on my body. I think these are made of titanium, which, in excess, any heavy metal can cause issues. I don't necessarily recall what that one is associated with or anything like that, but anything in your tooth or any kind of hardware in your teeth, on your teeth, in your mouth, they do run the risk of degrading and getting into your bloodstream and accumulating over time. So I would probably look into a natural dentist or a biological dentist to get help with this. So So serrapeptase is a digestive enzyme that contains protease. Honestly, it should be the opposite question. Is there ever a situation where I should take serrapeptase? Because we really shouldn't be relying on digestive enzymes. It's not sustainable and it's a crutch. And if you're relying on digestive enzymes, there's something else going on that you're not addressing that's probably festering underneath. So, in certain situations, like before when I spoke about coming off of a plant-based diet, that might be helpful. Coming off a plant-based diet, or if somebody had some really bad digestive trauma and needs some help getting things going, maybe. But it's not something that I would use daily. Really, 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 really well-cooked ones. Not too concerned. The benefits outweigh the cons, but I always go for wild caught because farm raised usually is pretty gnarly. Not necessarily. If you do want to lean up, the general idea is to lower fats, but everyone is so different that this might not work for you. It just might be too much. So that's what you would have to figure out. I think they're great, especially for people that can't tolerate the taste of beef liver. If you're interested, I have a list of beef liver supplements. They range from different prices. It just depends on what you're looking for on the approved products page on my website. They're all going to have PUFAs, so it really just depends. But the fattier fish like salmon is going to have more. So if that's something you're trying to avoid, then probably. But tilapia is not the greatest, and tuna can have some heavy metals. So just not eating it in excess is also a good idea. There's always going to be pros and cons to everything. This is not necessarily true. Low-fat dairy is not necessarily more insulinogenic than full-fat dairy. That said, though, low-fat dairy is going to have lower fat. So if you're somebody that thrives on a little more fat, or if you're trying to gain some weight, then full-fat dairy might help. So it really depends on your goals and what kind of macro ratios work for you as an individual. These are definitely a real thing. They do cause cellular calcification. They deplete our magnesium and copper. They can cause histamine response in a lot of people, especially some clients that I'm seeing lately. That said, it's really difficult to avoid them altogether. If you're someone who's super sensitive, maybe you opt to live in a house versus an apartment building. Maybe you opt to live more in the suburbs than a city, but it's really up to you, your situation. Other tips, shut your phone off at night, shut your Wi-Fi off at night, don't keep your phone in your pocket or near your body, or your laptop for that matter. Shut your Bluetooth off, shut your location off, especially when you don't need it. Those are simple tips, and I would also make sure I'm supporting myself nutritionally. It does deplete certain minerals, so making sure I'm getting those minerals in plenty. They're not something I would cook with every single day, but if I was in a good place, if my health was in a good place, and it is for me right now, so I generally use it about once or twice a week to cook steak. I'm not against deli meat, but I don't like turkey. So I would read my post titled Tryptophan and Inflammatory Protein to understand why. Otherwise, I love sliced roast beef deli meat, especially the herbed kind. As I talked about a little earlier, I was getting really tongue-tied saying that word. I would not use them long-term. I would only use them in certain situations where digestive support was truly needed, but only for a short period of time. Safe to eat, yeah. Beneficial for metabolism, no. So I would probably limit it to just once, maybe twice a week, but if it's 3 or 4 times right now, probably not. It is for me, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be pro-metabolic for you. So that's something that you would have to figure out. For both of them, there's usually always an iron component and a detoxification component, but you really have to address the underlying stress to really figure it out. So I would take a look at my post that I made today, what the different types of stress. Sounds like you're very stressed out right now. So I would take a look at my post today, see maybe what is resonating with you in terms of the sources of stress, and start tackling saying no to more things, making space for yourself, making time to eat, chewing your food 20 times before you swallow it, making sure you're not having too much water with your meal, making sure you're sitting down and have screens away from you. The decreased appetite is a result of stress. Stress suppresses our appetite, so I would maybe have smaller meals. smaller meals more frequently to see if you can get that appetite back up, because it's going to be something that you want to get back up. Otherwise, it's kind of like a spiral. Read my post from yesterday. It goes from alarm to resistance and then exhaustion. You don't want to end up there. For the dry eyes, I would make sure you're getting enough vitamin A in your diet. So not from a supplement, but unless it's beef liver, of course, but make sure you're getting enough vitamin A from high quality dairy products, beef liver, and things like that. And then for the allergies, I would check out my post titled Histamine, the Ultimate Hormone of Alarm. There's a bunch of minerals that are needed to help clear histamine, and that's the problem. It starts to build up. We start to get allergies and not be able to, deal with it. Yeah, and you may want to look into vitamin E for your dry eyes too. I'm not a fan of iron supplementation or DHA fish oil supplementation. I would check out my post titled My Thoughts on Multivitamins and Prenatals. I would also check out my post titled Essential Fatty Acids, Fact or Fiction. Iron supplementation during pregnancy can really harm the child. I know that midwives and doctors have this obsession with keeping hemoglobin, especially in the third trimester, up. I would also check out my post titled iron levels in the third trimester, and then the other one, 10%, with every pregnancy, 10%. A mother loses 10% of her minerals. That has more information on why iron supplementation can be so harmful. It dysregulates copper, and you need copper to sustain the pregnancy. As far as DHA goes, kids whose mother took fish oil during pregnancy, mothers whose breast milk contains more omega-3s are more likely to have allergic children, so children with allergies and maybe food intolerances. Babies with mothers who have higher DHA levels, their babies tend to be more wakeful at night due to the serotonin promoting effects of PUFA. So check out my post called Serotonin, the Stress Hormone. It's not a happy hormone. Omega-3 consumption during lactation and pregnancy can cause shorter lifespans and abnormalities in babies. It may also be associated with excessive bleeding at birth. So there's a lot of things that I don't like about fish oil. I'm really sorry to hear that. The issue with cancer is that it's a metabolic issue. So going on a vegan diet is not really going to heal the metabolism. It's probably going to make it worse. And so, what's happening with cancer is that the body doesn't have enough energy to reproduce itself in a quality way. So it starts going for quantity over quality, which is how we end up with these masses and tumors and things like that. I would honestly be looking to heal the metabolism. Also, take care of any iron overload, because cancer also usually has to do with iron. There's tons of usually iron in cancer cells, and low glutathione can also mean high iron, low copper. So you need copper to create glutathione, and you need animal food to do this. So a vegan diet is not going to provide that. If this were the case, I would probably look into ordering online. So US Wellness Meats is a great option, or just doing the desiccated beef liver caps. I like it. I drink it every day. Some people can't handle it though. So, just depends on you as a person. White tongue means thrush. It's candida, it's bacterial overgrowth. I had this while I was on the birth control pill. It takes some metabolic healing. So, if you're interested in working together, hit me up. So a normal cycle is actually 25 to 35 days. If I were to guess, you probably weren't ovulating unless you were tracking your temperatures. That's the best way to find out, but it sounds like you might actually be in a better place now. So if that's the case, congrats. Yeah, so the Weston A. Price Foundation ran a study on folks that were lactose intolerant, and they gave them raw dairy products instead of pasteurized dairy products, and 80% of them were able to tolerate the raw dairy with absolutely no problem. So yeah, I would try raw dairy. I would read my post titled What's the Deal with Coffee? I don't know what time you're going to bed, but if you're, waking up without an appetite, that usually means you're already running off of stress hormones. So both are not very good. This sounds like an iron issue. I would check out all my posts. Basically, they all have an iron component, but you probably want to start getting your copper up. So maybe start with my top 3 copper foods. That's a good place. So the lymphatic system doesn't really move unless we do. So physically, that's why exercise is so great for immunity. That's where the original thing came from, is because it moves our lymph system. We can also move it through massage or dry brushing or even some kind of scrubs. Rebounding is also great for the lymph system. That's really gentle. Walking is great. You just need to make sure that your detoxification pathways are in place to get it out. Because once things start moving, and if their detoxification pathways aren't in place, or support, isn't in place, it can cause things to recirculate. It can make people feel really sick, and that's why lymph massages can actually cause some detox reactions because people weren't actually ready for it. So I would take a look at that stuff. Oh gosh, I hope you're not scared of eating goat cheese just because you have PCOS. I think it is. Unless you have some kind of lactose intolerance and need to build that back up, it shouldn't really be something you need to be worried about. It's okay. It's definitely one of the adaptogens I don't mind as much, but it's energizing. It can maybe help with some hormone rebalancing, but it's really not going to take the place of a good nutrition strategy and lifestyle. I believe, don't quote me on this, it's also a goitrogen, so you want to get the gelatinized version versus the raw version. Well, if we look at why someone has gas, it's usually digestive problems. And if we go further back and ask why someone has digestive problems, it's usually because of stress. So stress, which can be many things, take a look at today's post, it can take some figuring out. So stress would be what I say is the most common reason for gas. No one really actually knows, but at least optometrists don't. But it usually has to do with age, it usually has to do with iron, it usually has to do with inflammation. So I know that when I started getting more copper in my diet, more fat-soluble vitamins, my floaters dramatically improved. I think they're fine. So this usually starts before pregnancy, so preconception. The body wasn't totally replenished, totally ready for conception, nutritionally speaking, vitality reserve-wise. This is why preconception planning and preparation is so important. It's actually something that I'm working on, something in relation to this topic with the preconception PT. But yeah, that's basically what's happening is if we don't go into pregnancy really well prepared, nutritionally speaking, minerally speaking, vitamin speaking, we're going to suffer a little bit, and it's going to come at the cost of us and maybe the child. But that said, you're already pregnant, so I would probably focus on eating smaller meals a day because your appetite is probably not so great with the nausea. So smaller meals a day, make sure you're eating lots of salt, make sure each meal has protein, carb, and fat. Eat as frequently as you can, and when you do have an appetite, really take advantage of it. Yeah, this can be nice in supporting digestion, but again, I wouldn't rely on it completely because that if you have to rely on it, that means there's some underlying dysfunction. So figuring out what that is super important. You can only lead a horse to water, so I really don't like calcium supplements. The best calcium supplement is high quality dairy. That's all I got for you. Oh, sorry to hear that. That's probably not driving with you, but if you're getting muscle meats in your diet, that should be plenty of B12 for you. So oily scalp is excess sebum. Excess sebum can be driven by estrogen. Estrogen, usually high estrogen, usually means that there's high iron. They usually work really well together in creating histamine. High estrogen is also telling me that your liver probably can't detoxify estrogen. So it's kind of like a very, it's a familial affair in terms of what's happening. So you want to boost your detoxification pathways, get rid of excess estrogen, and you do that through keeping your liver full of glycogen. So eating at a meal frequency that makes sense for you, eating the right foods, and then getting rid of iron. So eating copper-rich foods, donating blood if you're not cycling, stuff like that. Histamine issues usually have to do with low bioavailable copper. I would check out my post titled Histamine, the Ultimate Hormone of Alarm, and yeah, check it out. I'd probably do a red light just because I can get sun when I go outside, vitamin D when I go outside, and from foods. And red light can be really, really therapeutic, and it's kind of a little harder to get unless you're going outside during the right time, so sunrise and sunset. Yeah, so you probably have high estrogen, and high estrogen usually means you have high histamine, vice versa. So that could be the cause of itchiness. So you would really need to support your estrogen detoxification pathways, eat well and frequently, raw carrots. If if you're taking zinc for your skin, is it really working? I'd be curious. But no, drinking out of copper cups and things like that is not the same as ingesting bioavailable copper from foods. If you're breastfeeding, I would not worry about weight loss. You are a milk machine. You need the weight to create milk. And you know, your hormones might be imbalanced a little bit after pregnancy. It's going to vary when you start ovulating. When you start ovulating again, it's going to vary from person to person. So, you know, it's really, I wouldn't press your body into something or try to force it to lose weight, or worry too much about your hormones. Give your body time and grace to recover. You just created a human for 9 months. It's going to need at least that much time or more to bring things back into balance. So many histamine questions, and I'm not even going to get to all of them. Check out my post titled Histamine, the Ultimate Hormone of Alarm. There's usually an estrogen component. There's usually an iron component. Oh yeah, for sure. Iron feeds pathogens, which includes bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungus, etc. So you can bet, you know, our iron overload makes us more susceptible to the, you know, just take a look at the medications that are being recommended right now. Those are iron chelators. So, you know, I would say iron has a lot to do with our susceptibility to cold and flu. It sounds like stress. And when I say that, you know, your stress hormones will increase your heart rate. They'll cause you to sweat. And then the body odor piece, when you are stressed, you can't detoxify well. So you can have body odor. Yeah, 100%. It's usually stress in some way, shape, or form. Check out my post today, and it's usually a metabolic issue. So until you are able to raise your metabolism, things are going to move real slow. I hope my post isn't misinterpreted. I think eating well is really important. It's just when we eat to maybe discomfort, where our stomach feels like it's going to explode, that's a stress. So that's what I meant. So this isn't actually the question we should be asking. We should be asking, why am I in the exhaustion phase? Why do I have autoimmunity in the first place? And look at how I'm living my life, how I've been living my life up until this point when I got it, and take inventory of the actions, the things that I'm doing day to day that are not supporting me and healing, and go from there. Unfortunately, I have not, but I am working on something really cool with the preconception PT, which should help solve this problem. So I would check out, in the meantime, my post check out my post titled My Thoughts on Multivitamins and Prenatals for more information on why I don't like them. But more to come.